Is it hard that I might sound like I'm asking a stupid question for our friends at home. It's just that everyone deals with grief differently. Everyone justifies it or rationalize it in their head, and that's their coping mechanism. I'm guessing some mechanisms work better than others, and probably some mechanisms are just not helpful at all. So I'm thinking about you get some people, they just want to cry in their beer the rest of their life, and that's my opinion of that. Is that's not honoring the dead, and it's not getting out and smashing your one life, right?
Yeah.
But how did you find it, Steve, to lose a friend?
I think that was probably one of the hardest things when I found out about that. For myself, I struggled in Iraq the first time in 2003, and it wasn't so much what we sing. I never once really particularly thought that my life was at risk. It was always kind of shit that was close. But I was never sort of in a situation where I thought, I'm going to lose my life here. That didn't go through my head. Why I really struggled was because of the heat, the temperature, and all of the guys on camp had sickness and diarrhea, which probably sounds bizarre that you're out in war, people are trying to kill you with missiles. And the stress came from being sick, because what actually happened to me, because I lost so much weight, it went round camp constantly. You had sickness and diarrhea, you got rid of it, you got better, and within 24 hours you had it back again, because we were having to purify our own water. We only had 2 litres of water a day for the first weeks until all of the supplies come in. And you had nowhere to wash, nowhere to shower. That 2 litres of water, you were drinking it. So hygiene just went out the water completely. And everyone was just sick constantly. And I lost that much weight mentally. It took me back to being that kid again, of this small, skinny kid. I came back from that tour. There's pictures of me, and I think I dropped back into like 9 stone 13 or something like that. I dropped just below the 10 stone mark, and that had an effect on me more because of my insecurities as a kid, that I'd gone out there, this big, strong lad who was fit, physical training instructor, and I was now turning back into this weak, skinny, frail kid where my insecurities were. And that's what I struggled with more than anything. And I got PTSD 10 years after serving. After serving in Iraq the first time, it was 2013. I'd been out the army 3 years. And again, it was a really bizarre thing that triggered it off. And I can pinpoint it exactly now. It was my granddad's death. And my granddad had died, and because I'd been very close, brought up by my grandparents. And in the army, as you know, I was always taught that it's weak to show your emotions, and you didn't cry. There was no time for crying. It was just get on with stuff. And because I treated my granddad's death the same and just sort of buried it all to try and forget about it, it caught up with me, and I ended up seeing a psychologist, a specialist in the army. And what she'd said to me was, because I'd had this trauma in 2003 and never dealt with it, and this has now happened, the subconscious mind has brought it back to the surface again. And I was having dreams. What my mind had done, it was quite weird how this had happened, was when I came out of the army around 2010, I read a story in the army, and it really, really affected me. And you'll probably know this story. And it was 4 military police were trapped, and they basically ran out of ammunition. And I read that story, and they were caught by the Taliban and their heads were cut off. And this was in the papers and stuff like that. And they were publicly drove around with the heads on the back of the wagons and all that. And I remember reading that story and just thinking, fucking hell, like, people think of stress. I couldn't think of anything worse at all of being with 3 of your mates, coming under attack when you're not expecting it, and realizing you've run out of ammunition and you are now literally minutes away from your head being cut off and stuck on your back. And that's exactly what they've done. And I read that story and it had a real impact on me. I went there, I took myself there and imagined it. And because I'd done that, I started having these dreams that I was one of these guys that had run out of ammunition. And that never happened to me. I was never in a situation like that at all. I'd just read this in the paper, and because of the trauma I'd had in Iraq and my granddad's death, my body just wanted to release it. And it brought me this immense, worst nightmare I've ever had. And a week later, I had exactly the same dream again, that I'm in this small group of people. I've run out of ammunition. And that got to every 3 days, 2 days, every night, 3-4 times a night, till eventually I cracked. I literally broke, and I had to see a psychologist, and that therapy work was massive for me. It completely changed me. It allowed me to get rid of all that crap I'd stored for 12 years, and probably as a kid, all of that stuff from my dad. Being tough with me, throwing spades at me, throwing padlocks at me, and forcing me to go out on my bike, all of the stuff in the army, the whole lot just came up. And I remember in them sessions, and I'm strong enough to admit that, I cried and cried my eyes out in every one of those sessions with that therapist, until it all came out. But off the back of that, my results, I remember the 4th session walking out of there and just thinking, there was physically, I could feel a weight lifted off my shoulders, as if I'd just released it all. And it was kind of like, now I'm going to really get some results now that this shit's out the way. And that for me, this is why I say to people, if you're having any sort of trauma, do not think it's weak to go speak to someone, because that woman literally changed my life. And I wouldn't be where I am now, and I wouldn't be getting the results that I am if I hadn't gone and seen that therapist. So for me, anybody, if they do watch this at all, reach out, speak to somebody.